Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So I thought I would do a little bit of a follow-up video to the video I had put out yesterday. Now, after I put that video out, I started doing a little bit more research, and I found quite a bit of stuff to talk about that I should have really included in that video. Now, the number one thing is the forbearance. Now, a lot of people are talking about this. This is where you're allowed to miss payments on your mortgage for up to 3 months. Now, it's not really missing payments. What I kind of took at it or from it when I first started hearing about it is that they're going to tack these monthly payments onto the end of the entire term of the loan, but that's not what's happening. I'll leave a link down in the description to an article I was reading about this, and it turns out that this forbearance is allowing you to skip the payment without going into foreclosure process or being delinquent in the process. But when your forbearance is no longer available, you owe all that money at that time. So to kind of give it in perspective, if you have like a $2,000 loan on your house, $2,000 a month is what your monthly payment is, and you ask for forbearance for 3 months, after that last month, that third month, you owe all the previous months up until that month, including that month. So if you have a $2,000 mortgage, at the end of the forbearance, you're going to owe $8,000, and if you don't come up with it, you're going to go into the delinquency process, or you'll have to restructure the loan, if you can. So a lot of people are kind of taking that as, hey, I can skip a couple of payments and everything's going to be cool until I get my job back. Not really. You're going to end up skipping a couple of payments, but then you owe those payments. You owe them right then and there, right at the end of the forbearance time. So it's a very tricky situation, and if people start missing those payments, they're going to get into a lot of trouble. One of the other things I started reading about was that the mortgage servicers, okay, not like the big banks, like the banks that hold on to mortgages, but the mortgage servicers, which is, I don't really want to name names, so if you just type in mortgage servicers into the Google search, you're going to see a whole list of them. Now, these guys, they have to pay even if you don't. So even if you were to go to try and get this forbearance on the mortgages, or you start missing payments on it, those mortgage servicers still have to pay out to provide the money to the mortgage-backed security investors and the insurance companies and all the like. So they still owe. They're not getting forbearance. They have to pay. And from what I was reading in some of these articles is that if 25% of mortgages don't get paid, these guys are going to be in some serious trouble. And I was also reading how up to 50% of mortgages are going to go into forbearance, that people are going to be sitting in a position in which they will not be able to make the payments, and they're going to ask for this forbearance, and these mortgage servicers are not going to be able to handle it, and they're going to start going out of business or going to need a lifeline from the Fed. Now, the thing about the mortgage servicers as opposed to the banks is that the banks do have access to the Federal Reserve and as far as getting the liquidity that they need in order to pay the mortgage-backed securities, but these mortgage servicers do not. And they were lobbying the officials, the government officials, to put a clause or put something into the stimulus package to help them out, and it didn't happen. So now if we do have a couple of months that go by where these guys are not getting paid from the mortgages, that people just kind of quit making their payments, there's going to be some serious trouble when it comes to these mortgage servicers, and in turn, the mortgage-backed securities, which the Fed has already said that they would start buying. So what ends up happening here in a couple of months is still kind of up in the air. But one of the other things I started reading was also about these REITs, the Real Estate Investment Trust. These guys are also sitting in a very precarious situation because these guys, a lot of them, are not credit worthy of the Fed's corporate bond purchases. Their rating is too low, and the Federal Reserve is only buying high-grade corporate debt. So these REITs, a lot of these companies, are going to be stuck in a position in which they cannot get the loans, or they cannot sell their bonds, or the bonds that they do sell have such a high interest rate of payment to them that they are not going to be able to service that debt. So they're sitting in a very tricky situation as well. So the whole thing is kind of coming into a position in which that only the highest grade corporate debt is going to be purchased from the Federal Reserve, and it's going to leave a lot of these REITs out there in the cold, meaning that they're not going to be able to borrow money, or at least, the money that they do borrow is going to be such a high interest rate that come 2023, I think is when they said a lot of these things would come due, they're not going to be able to roll that over or won't be able to make the payment, essentially. So there's some very, very precarious situations taking place right there. And like I said, I'll leave links to all this stuff down in the description for you guys. And then finally, the mills. I didn't realize this before I had done the video yesterday. A lot of lumber mills are now announcing curtailments. Canfor up in Canada has announced that they are going to be cutting their production by 40%. All the way over to the British Columbia area, down south of the United States, where the southern yellow pine is milled. They'll be cutting anywhere from 40 to 50%, and there was quite a few mills who were announcing that. So we're going to see what happens once those guys start curtailing development, to see if the future prices, well, if they continue to go down, or if they end up holding steady on the fact that there's less lumber out there to be available to be purchased. But I have a feeling that the inventories are going to continue to build up and the price of futures are going to continue to drop. Anyhow, I just wanted to kind of give you guys that little bit of an update on those. I thought that was pretty interesting stuff. And like I said, I'll leave links down in the description. Uneducated Economist, you guys let me know.